Hey, greetings. It's the Obi Witch. And today I want to talk about the origins of the term witch, and one of the few reasons why I choose to use the term, and also what the term does not mean, because there's a lot of misinformation about the term and so forth. The term witch derives from an early English word, Wicca, which, contrary to popular, does not mean wise. Gerald Gardner suggested this in his very first book on witchcraft, and he got it from another scholar who suggested it because he linked the term witch to the word magi and magus, which do actually come from the word wise one. Actually, if you read the Bible, the three wise men, the wise one. But actually, if you trace the analogy of the witch, it's not wise one. That was a mistake. That's been corrected. Actually, the term witch comes from an old word that means a soothsayer or one who divines, and both of them come from an earlier Proto-Germanic word meaning a sorcerer, so, one who uses magic. So then we'll kind of where the origins of the word witch actually comes from. Now, there are other terms that are also translated. One of the Germanic words for witch is hex, which comes from a word that means hag. Hag comes from another word that means hedge, and it means a hedge rider, one who crosses in between and through the worlds. And since, again, the word witch actually is not Celtic, by the way, it comes from Nordic, because the English language is not a Celtic language. It is a Nordic language. It comes from Germanic sources, contrary to popular belief. And so therefore, actually, if you get pure sensual, the term witch doesn't actually belong to Celtology. The term witch is those of a Germanic nature. And so the Anglo-Saxon term Wicca, where we get, the term witch, further back from ancient Germans and Norse people. But it's actually a term for those who use divine the future, normally in some kind of shamanistic experience, crossing between the worlds and so forth. Walking is that bridge of heaven and earth connecting, and so a witch is a person who can connect to the other side and pull forth information or send out information. There's also been some suggesting that the word witch means to bend or shape, which it doesn't actually. That was suggested by Starhawk, who was a famous author. Again, that was just a theory. It never was proven. The only ones we actually know, and I'm actually using a book that's actually kind of is The Red Church. I've read this book before, and just because it's a quick reference, and I've read all this in other works on the study of the word witch, that it's pretty simple that the word witch is always a practice. Although it is associated with a spiritual practice, it never was in the original form a religion. It was, although it definitely, witches often in the past did act as a medium between the gods, which would have been seen very much like a priest or priestess. And they weren't always seen as a good thing. Historically, witches have not been good or bad. They've been seen more like somewhere in between. The idea of a good white witch is something that developed over time, and as is the idea of a black witch. Originally, witches were had more of a neutrality to them. They could use, they did both good and bad deeds, and there was, because again, ancient witches did not have the law of three. They did not believe in the Wiccan Rede or anything like that. It was simply a practice. It was a practice of looking, crossing over into the other world, bringing back information or sending information back into the world. Over time, the term witch did kind of become a more negative connotation, and it was negative long before the Christian church actually came around. We actually find that literally thousands of years before Christ was born, the Germanic people were burning people as witches, as people who practice magic for negative means. So the term witch has always been somewhat of those who walked on the edge of society. They were always the people who were always the outcasts, but yet they were also the people sought after. They were the people you went to when you wanted to contact your the gods, or when you wanted to talk to your beloved dead father or mother. You went to the witch. And I think that's something that also needs to be. Divination and witchcraft are linked. Again, the term witch actually comes from the word soothsayer, one who says truth, through divine. It comes from also the term the one, basically what we would call magic, that using that divine energy, that connection, that bridge between the world. A witch is one who rides on the hedge. They walk between the worlds, which is something that is kind of neat. When Wiccans say they cast a circle, they walk between that connection. And I think that's the problem with a lot of Wicca, or we call it religion Wicca, and so forth, is that a lot of Wiccans, why Wicca is a witchcraft-based traditions, aren't really witches. They don't actually connect to the other world. In order to be a witch, you must connect. If you don't connect, you're simply witch in title, but not in practice. Now, I do believe in reclaiming the term witch for positive and powerful meaning, and something that I've really felt drawn to myself, to reclaim the word witch, especially since I've been moving more into powwow, which is Brookery. Traditionally, Brookery has used the term hex as a kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way. The term witch was a lot of times, especially of course, in the 1800s, when Brookery began to, form here in the United States. Witches were always seen as negative things. Actually, the powwow was seen like the opposite. He was the one who sought out the witch and removed her curses and spells. There was no concept of a white witch. Although I think that we need to move, I think that the word witch does need to be reclaimed and made into a positive thing. And so for me, I began more and more calling myself a powwow witch, which, by the way, is not historically accurate, and I do admit that. It's something that is a modern adaptation that I'm using, because I feel that the term witch best suits me, and I'm working within what many would call a powwow tradition or Brookery tradition, in the sense that and I practice, of course, Christianity, because, again, witchcraft is a practice, a spiritual practice, but nevertheless a practice. And that's just kind of just a few things that I just wanted to share, where the origin of the term witch came from. Many blessings.